You aren't my daughter. You are a debtor to this family. Sign the deed, or we will bury you." That is what my father shouted as he threw a thick manila envelope at my chest. I had just opened the door to my new home, expecting a congratulations. Instead, I got a civil lawsuit. He wasn't there to visit. He was there to demand I sign my house over to my brother to pay back the cost of raising me. I looked at my mother, who was staring at my diamond earrings, calculating their value. I looked at my brother, Jacob, who was smirking like he already owned the place. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just picked up the legal papers, looked them dead in the eye, and closed the door. I locked the deadbolt, and as I listened to them pounding on the wood, I realized the truth. They didn't come here to celebrate me. They came to evict me. Have you ever achieved the biggest success of your life, only to realize your own family sees it as a personal insult? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one. I walked into the kitchen and threw the lawsuit onto the quartz island. The silence in the house was heavy, a stark contrast to the storm raging outside. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. That's the thing about surviving on your own since you were a teenager. You learn pretty quickly that panic is a luxury you can't afford. I poured myself a glass of water and looked around the room. Every inch of this place, from the hand-laid backsplash to the vintage light fixtures, was paid for with money I had bled for. And they had the audacity to call it stolen. They claimed I took the money from Jacob's college fund. That was the lie they told themselves to sleep at night. The truth was far uglier. And I had the proof tucked away in a fireproof box in my office. I called it the ledger. I started keeping it when I was 16. The day my father told me that braces were cosmetic and selfish while handing Jacob the keys to a used Honda Civic. From that day on, I tracked every single penny I spent on my own survival. I remember my sophomore year of college. I was living in a basement apartment that smelled permanently of mildew. The heating was broken, so I slept in 3 layers of clothes. I ate expired ramen because I could buy it in bulk for pennies. I remember walking to class with my glasses taped together at the hinge because I couldn't afford a new pair, keeping my head down so no one would see the shame in my eyes. I didn't ask my parents for a dime. I knew the answer would be a lecture on responsibility. At the exact same time, Jacob was posting photos on Instagram from Las Vegas. He was 19, posing with a bottle of Grey Goose at a table that cost $5,000. My parents liked the photo. They commented, "Looks like fun, sweetie." They paid for that trip. They paid for his semester abroad that turned into a 3-month partying bender. They paid off his credit cards every time he maxed them out on online poker and sports betting. They didn't call it gambling addiction. They called it bad luck. They didn't call him a leech. They called him a budding entrepreneur who just needed a little capital to get started. I starved so he could feast. I walked through snowstorms to get to my waitressing shifts so he could take Ubers to parties. And every time I visited home, looking thin and exhausted, my mother would just sigh and say, "Celine, you really need to take better care of yourself. You look so haggard." She never asked if I was hungry. She never asked if I needed help. She just judged the result of her own neglect. I looked back at the lawsuit on the counter. Unjust enrichment. The legal term felt like a bad joke. They truly believed that any success I had was a mistake, a glitch in the universe, because that money was supposed to be Jacob's. In their minds, I was just a battery, a resource to be drained to keep their golden boy shining. They thought they could bully me into submission because they remembered the girl who used to beg for their attention. They didn't realize that girl died in that cold basement apartment years ago. The woman standing in this kitchen was an architect. I knew how to build things that lasted. And I knew exactly where the structural weaknesses in their lies were buried. They wanted a fight about money? Fine. But they forgot that while they were writing checks to cover Jacob's disasters, I was keeping score. And my ledger didn't lie. I picked up the legal complaint again, skimming past the dense jargon until I found the paragraph that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a demand for the deed, it was a complete fabrication of history. Paragraph 14 stated that my parents had loaned me the down payment from a verbal family trust intended for Jacob's education, and that I had embezzled these funds to purchase my property. There was no trust. There never had been. The only family fund that existed was the retirement account my father drained years ago to buy a boat he never used. They weren't just greedy, they were delusional. They had rewritten reality to make themselves the victims of their own daughter's success. Reading those words, seeing my name listed as defendant next to the people who were supposed to protect me, should have broken me. I stood there in the quiet of my kitchen, waiting for the tears. I waited for that familiar, crushing weight in my chest, the desperate need to fix it, to apologize, to be the good child again. For 25 years, that had been my role. The good child doesn't argue. The good child absorbs the family's dysfunction so the golden child can shine. The good child believes that if she just works harder, achieves more, and gives more. Eventually, they will love her. But the tears didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange, clinical detachment. It was like looking at a blueprint for a building that was structurally unsound. You don't weep over a rotting beam. You mark it for demolition. That was the moment the good child finally died. I realized they didn't see me as a person. To them, I was a failed investment. They had put zero capital in, but they felt entitled to all the dividends. They looked at my house and didn't see my hard work. They saw a resource they had lost control of. And the lawsuit? That wasn't a punishment. It was an acquisition attempt. They were trying to hostilely take over my life because they knew I was the only one in the family with any actual value. I walked to the island and picked up my phone. My hand hovered over my mother's contact. The old instinct was to call her, to beg, to ask why. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was an architect. I knew that you can't build a future on a foundation that hates you. I dialed a different number. "This is Robert," a gruff voice answered. He was a real estate attorney I had worked with on a restoration project, a man who ate developers for breakfast. "Robert, it's Celine," I said, my voice flat and calm. "I just got served. My parents are suing me for unjust enrichment. They want the house." He started to laugh, then stopped when he realized I wasn't joking. "Unjust enrichment? Unless they have a signed contract, that's a shakedown, Celine. I can file a motion to dismiss by morning. We'll crush this." "No," I said. "Don't dismiss it." "Excuse me? If we dismiss it, they'll just try something else. They'll harass me at work. They'll vandalize the property. I need to end this permanently." I looked at the security camera monitor on the wall, watching the empty porch where they had stood just an hour ago. "I need you to stall them. Tell their lawyer I'm scared. Tell them I'm considering settling. But I need time to process the emotional trauma and review the financials." "You want to negotiate with terrorists?" Robert asked, confused. "No. I want them to think they've won. I need 3 weeks to get my paperwork in order. If they think I'm about to sign the deed, they'll get arrogant. And when they get arrogant, they get sloppy." 3 weeks, Robert agreed, though he sounded wary. "But Celine, whatever you're planning, make sure you don't leave fingerprints." "Don't worry," I said, looking at the ledger on my desk. "I'm not going to break the law. I'm going to enforce it." I hung up with Robert and immediately dialed my mother. I let my voice tremble, pitching it up just enough to sound like the scared daughter she remembered. "Mom?" I whispered when she picked up. "It's Celine. I got the papers." "Good," she said, her tone instantly smug. "We hated to do it, sweetheart, but you left us no choice. Your father is very hurt." "I know," I sniffled. "I don't want to fight you. I want to fix this. If I sign the house over to Jacob, will you forgive me?" There was a pause on the line, heavy with triumph. I could practically hear her smiling. "Of course we will. That's what family does. We forgive." "Okay," I said, letting out a shaky breath. "But there's a problem. I talked to the bank. Since the mortgage is in my name, I can't just sign the deed over without triggering a due on sale clause. They need to approve Jacob as the new owner." "Well, that shouldn't be an issue," she snapped. "Jacob is very capable." "I know. But on paper, he doesn't have much credit history. The loan officer said the only way to fast-track the transfer is if I can show familial financial support. Basically, I need to prove that our finances have been intertwined for years to justify the gift." "What does that mean?" she asked, suspicious now. "It means I need to submit your tax returns." I lied smoothly. "Specifically, the last 10 years. If I can show the bank that you guys claimed me as a dependent or that we shared expenses, they'll view the transfer as an internal family reorganization instead of a sale. It saves us about $30,000 in transfer taxes, too." "30,000? Her greed took the bait instantly. "Well, that makes sense. We did claim you for years, obviously. We supported you until you were practically an adult." "Right. So if you just send me the full returns, the 1,040 seconds, the schedules, everything, I can attach them to the application and get this done. I can probably have the deed ready to sign in 3 weeks? I'll have your father scan them tonight," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She thought she had won. She thought I was scrambling to save them money. "See? This is what happens when you stop being stubborn and listen to your parents." The files arrived in my email inbox the next morning. 10 years of financial history. I didn't send them to the bank. I sent them to a forensic accountant named David, an old friend from college who owed me a favor. "What am I looking for?" David asked when I called him. "Discrepancies," I said. "They claimed they supported me through college. I want to see if they told the government the same lie." 2 days later, David called me back. He sounded almost giddy. Celine, you are not going to believe this. Try me. Okay. So for the last 10 years, even after you moved out at 18, they have claimed you as a dependent on their taxes. Every single year. They stated you lived with them for 12 months of the year, and that they provided more than 50% of your support. I moved out the day after high school graduation, I said, looking at my ledger. I paid my own rent, my own tuition, my own food. Exactly. That's tax fraud. But it gets better. Because they claimed you. They qualified for the other dependent credit and several education credits that they weren't entitled to. And looking at their income, they've been underreporting cash revenue from your dad's side business for years to stay in a lower bracket. They've been cooking the books to fund Jacob's lifestyle. How much? I asked. Rough estimate? They've defrauded the IRS of at least $150,000 in taxes and penalties over the decade. This isn't a mistake, Celine. This is systematic federal tax evasion. I stared at the screen, a cold smile touching my lips. This was it. This was the smoking gun. They had handed me the weapon I needed to destroy them. All because they were too arrogant to believe I would ever check. But I wasn't done. I needed one more piece of evidence to seal their fate socially, not just legally. I opened the app for my home security system and scrolled back to the night they had come to evict me. I found the footage from 10 minutes before they rang the doorbell. In the video, my mother and Jacob were standing on my porch, waiting for my father to park the car. They didn't know the camera was recording audio. This place is wasted on her, Jacob sneered, looking around at my landscaping. It's huge. Don't worry, my mother's voice was clear as a bell. Once she signs, it's yours. We'll tell everyone it was a gift. I'm not living here. Jacob laughed. I'm selling it immediately. I checked the comps. I can get $750 for this dump. That's enough for a Porsche and a condo in Miami. As soon as she signs, I'm kicking her to the street. Let her figure it out. Shh, my mother said. But she was smiling. Just let us handle the talking. She's weak. She'll fold. I saved the clip. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers and put a copy on a USB drive. Weak. They thought I was weak. They were about to find out exactly how strong I had become. I had the tax fraud. I had the confession. Now all I needed was the stage. And just like clockwork, the invitation arrived in the mail the next day. A heavy, cream-colored envelope with gold calligraphy. You are cordially invited to the 30th wedding anniversary gala of Jennifer and Michael. It was perfect. They wanted a show? I was going to give them one they would never forget. The invitation sat on my desk like a summons. The 30th wedding anniversary of Jennifer and Michael. A black tie gala at the Wilmington Yacht Club. It was the kind of venue where membership fees cost more than the average American makes in a year. Money my parents definitely didn't have. Which meant they were putting this entire charade on credit, banking on selling my house to pay the bill. My mother called me an hour after the mail came. Did you get it? She asked, breathless with excitement. I did, I said, leaning back in my office chair. It looks expensive. It has to be perfect, Celine. All of your father's business partners will be there. We need to show them that the family is strong. That we're united. She paused, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. And we're going to make the announcement during the toasts. You know, about the house transfer. It will be such a beautiful moment. The prodigal daughter returning the favor. The nausea rolled in, but I swallowed it down. I'll be there, I said. And I'll bring the paperwork. Oh, wonderful. And Celine? Wear something. Soft. A pastel dress, maybe? We want you to look approachable. Sure, Mom, I lied. I'll see you there. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the dark monitor of my computer. Approachable? No. I wasn't going there to be approachable. I wasn't going there to be the soft, compliant daughter who faded into the wallpaper. On the night of the gala, I didn't wear pastel. I wore a black, tailored power suit, sharp shoulders, high-waisted trousers, and stilettos that clicked like gunshots on the pavement. I pulled my hair back into a severe, sleek bun. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like the CEO of a company about to acquire a failing competitor. In my pocket, I didn't have the deed. I had a USB drive. I drove to the yacht club in silence. No music. Just focus. When I handed my keys to the valet, I saw my parents' car parked right at the front. A leased Mercedes they couldn't afford. Inside, the ballroom was dripping with crystals and white roses. It smelled of old money and desperation. My parents were at the entrance, greeting guests like royalty. My father was laughing too loud, clutching a scotch. My mother was gripping the arm of a local developer, probably trying to secure a loan. And Jacob? He was by the bar, already drunk on champagne, wearing a tuxedo that didn't quite fit, looking around the room with the arrogant boredom of a prince waiting for his coronation. They spotted me. My mother's smile faltered for a fraction of a second when she saw the suit, but she recovered quickly. She waved me over. "Celine," she chirped, pulling me into a stiff, performative hug. "Interesting outfit. You have the papers?" "Right here," I said. Her eyes gleamed. "Good. We'll call you up during the speeches. Just smile." They drifted off, confident and careless, unaware the ground beneath them was already gone. I moved to the tech booth and slid a 50 across the console. "My mother wants a surprise video cued when I take the mic." The technician pocketed the cash and nodded. "You won't miss it," I said. My mother soon took the stage, radiant in gold, my father looming proudly behind her. "Tonight isn't just about 30 years, she said, voice trembling on cue. "It's about family. My daughter Celine is gifting her riverfront home to her brother, Jacob." Polite applause. Jacob raised his glass, smug. I stepped onto the stage as the clapping faded. My mother reached for me. I took the microphone instead. "Gift?" I said calmly. "Or extortion?" Silence slammed the room. "Before anything's signed," I continued, "let's hear Jacob's plan for the house." I nodded to the booth. The screen behind us went dark, then lit up with porch footage. "I'm selling it," Jacob's voice boomed. $750. Porsche, Miami condo. On screen. My mother laughed. "She'll fold. As soon as she signs, she's out on the street." Jacob sneered. Gasps rippled through the room. Jacob went pale. "I didn't sign the deed," I said, turning to my father. "But I did sign something else." I held up an envelope with the IRS logo. "You sued me for raising costs, so I checked your finances. For 10 years, you claimed me as a dependent while I worked 2 jobs to survive. You stole thousands in tax credits." I raised the documents. "And you've hidden income since 2014. Estimated fraud. Over $150,000. My mother lunged for the mic. I stepped back. "I filed this as a whistleblower this morning. I didn't give Jacob my house. I gave your tax returns to the IRS." I looked at them once more. "Happy anniversary." Phones came out. Business partners stepped away. My parents stood frozen. I dropped the mic and walked out. Jacob blocked the doors, shaken. I paused. "Get a job." Outside, I blocked them all. Within 48 hours, the IRS froze their assets. Trial followed. Their reputation vanished. Jacob ended up broke and couch surfing. 6 months later, a treasury check arrived, my whistleblower award. Enough to clear my mortgage. Now I stand on my porch at sunrise, coffee in hand. The house is still standing. It's mine. Sometimes, the only way to win a rigged game is to burn the board.